Welcome to Praying Through the Bible, number 5, Genesis 15, a prayer of if and when. Sigh. Receiving the promises in Genesis 12, Abraham lived in the world of if and when. Living with expectation can bring hope or become a burden. The burden of expectation is the fear it will not be accomplished. Abraham is a conundrum of fear and faith, just like the rest of us. His faith leads him out of Ur, chapter 12. His fear leads him out of the promised land to Egypt, where he's afraid of Pharaoh, also chapter 12. His faith leads him to battle against kings. Wow. Chapter 14. By the way, in chapter 14, that is the very first time the term Hebrew is used in the Bible. Abraham the Hebrew, chapter 14, verse 13. God is creating a new race of people through Abraham. That also means Abraham is the only one like himself. Well, that and his family. Surrounded by those who think he's different, not one of them. If that produced fear, then when God appears to him in Genesis 15, Yahweh says, "Do not be afraid." Possibly he is fearful of retribution from the 4 kings from whom he rescued Lot and his cluster of people. Or as is common, God is telling him not to be afraid, although God has appeared to him, or oftentimes when angels appear, that's when they say, "Don't be afraid." That is supposedly the most common command in the Bible. Do not fear, or something equivalent. I've heard do not fear or its equivalence is found 365 times in the Bible. I can't verify that because that would require me counting. And when it comes to math, what I like is the idea of daily conquering our fear. What I don't like is the idea of daily fear. Abraham's prayer in Genesis 15 sounds like a sigh. I've been told I sigh a lot. Apparently I sigh and I don't even know about it. I'm totally unaware. But have you ever prayed while sighing? If so, it's a prayer of resignation, acceptance, possibly even of confusion or contention with God. More importantly, it is a prayer of faith in God and His promises, even if that faith is hanging on by a thread. God promises in 15:1 to Abram, "Your reward will be great." And immediately Abraham responds, "Lord God, what can you give me since I am childless?" Chapter 15, verse 2. Can you hear the sigh? Seemingly nothing else mattered to Abraham. Waiting on God, another common command. Abraham had appointed Eleazar, his servant, as his heir. God reassures him. So Abram believes Yahweh and credited it to him as righteousness. Chapter 15, verse 6. That means God looked at Abraham and decided since he believed in God's promise, Yahweh would credit that to pay for the times of Abraham's failures. God allows our faith to count, that's credited, against our failures of unfaith. Ah, the sweet comfort and reward of faith. Faith sustains us because we live in the shadow of not yet fulfilled promises, and not yet answered prayers. We all live in the world of if and when. God's promises are both conditional and unconditional, and sometimes we confuse the two. When praying about problems, people, plans, and such, we hope God will say yes. God sometimes says no. Most of the time, what we immediately hear and see is silence. That means when waiting, we are forced to live in both the when and the if. Prayer challenge. The more or the most of the time a Christian lives, we spend waiting. So pray for strength against fear and doubt. Pray we will not allow time waiting or a singular request to consume us. Think of prayer requests that we have made and ask God if we are confusing God's conditional and unconditional promises. But live in the hope of when, and pray for strength to live in the reality of if. While living, thank God for the greatest promise, Jesus Christ. That is, we are credited as righteous by our faith because of Jesus Christ. Start praying. That's praying through the Bible, number 5, Genesis 15, a prayer of if and when. If this has been a blessing to you, please share. Thank you.